Welcome to season 5 of What, Why, God. And in this season, we're asking the question, why not God? Because a lot of people are looking back at Jesus, back at God, wanting to know really about what is this all about? Because I think they're feeling that the world is not answering their needs, not answering their reason for why am I here? And so people are coming back and saying, well, I left church. Maybe there's more to it than I think, than I first assumed. And so today I have with me Allison Haver. I want to say Ogden. That's her other name. But she's been married now. How long have you guys been married?
6 years.
6 years. That's fantastic. To a wonderful man.
Yep.
She and I have been friends for a very long time. Our girls grew up together, really good friends. And she's just a wonderful woman. And she has a really good way of introducing the Bible to people. She's just unafraid. And she was just recently in Colombia.
Right.
And having conversations with kids. And I think it was Missy that said she was just so fantastic at just being unabashedly, what's the word I'm looking for? Brave about sharing the gospel. If people ask questions.
Right.
So let's just kind of start right there. You're a teacher, and I'm sure some of that kind of helped prepare you for all of that.
It did. Yeah.
And so you have some like really good nuggets to help people with the question, how do we make the gospel desirable?
Okay.
To people who think, why not God?
Right. So I think one of the biggest obstacles is to overcome the assumption or the fear that people are not interested.
Yeah.
Okay, that was mine. You say, oh, you're brave, Allison. Well, there was a time where I wasn't brave.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to not have that assumption that they're not interested or they're going to be turned off by me. And so being able to overcome that, as a teacher, we learn to ask questions.
Yeah.
You ask why and what and when and where. You ask those questions to get interest from the person you're talking to.
Right.
And when we were in Colombia, it was amazing because we were with a schoolroom full of children that were high schoolers, crowded into this narrow space, no windows, no AC. It was quite warm. And they're like, why are you here? And we said, well, we're here to help out, local churches, and we do ministry and help people who need resources because they're, refugees from Venezuela. And I said, but we're here today to just answer your questions and to talk with you.
Yeah,
and
that's
I said,
wonderful.
what kind of questions do you have? And we were supposed to be with them for about 15 minutes. Instead, we were probably running late. We ran about 35 minutes because they had so much on their minds, high schoolers.
Yeah.
And they were asking very deep questions, like, why is there evil in the world?
Yeah, that's a big one these
Why
days.
is there sickness? Why do people die? Why is there war?
Right.
What does science think?
Right.
How do you have your Christian faith and still believe in science?
Yes.
And so all these questions, which represent what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
People are wondering.
Yeah, they have a lot of good questions. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're doing this video series is because we've been noticing a lot more of these questions coming in, and they're not unusual. There's nothing new under the sun. These sorts of questions have, come and gone and gone. And I think the question of evil and where is God are very, very typical questions for people. So how do you impart your knowledge to people without making it feel like it's a lecture?
Okay. So first of all, you do have to be aware of your own body language, tone of voice, and approach. You do want to ask questions. You don't want to be thinking constantly about your next line.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we talk in conversations, we're kind of hearing them, but we're thinking about what we're going to say next.
Oh, that's really good.
So we're not really paying attention. So instead, just put all that aside, hear what they are saying and read them, what they're saying, and then you can answer it.
Yeah.
I always suggest brief answers. And I'm also a parent. I know what it's like where you can get on a roll because you really want them to hear you. Hello, you want to fix their problem.
Yeah.
That doesn't go over great.
Yeah.
And it makes them want to flee from you.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to monopolize the conversation. You want to have them talking more than you. And that takes a little bit of practice and discipline. And everybody screws up. I mess up sometimes too.
Yeah,
and then I'm like, ugh, what was I doing?
Yeah, I know.
I got the eye rolls. And so that is something we have to be mindful for.
And you mentioned something about it being a pleasing aroma.
Right.
Yeah, that's biblical.
Right. So there's a lot of people, if they're interested in trying to figure out what life means and their purpose in life. What is this Christianity thing? There's a lot of people who have kind of stereotypes of Christians.
Yes.
Sometimes it's deserved.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not, or
Yeah.
sometimes they're uninformed.
Right.
Okay. So we have to go in there realizing those stereotypes might exist. And if we are supposed to be, a pleasing aroma, well, think about when you walk into a restaurant and the smells of wonderful foods hit you, you want to keep going in and you
Yeah.
want to order food.
Yeah.
So we want to have in our demeanor and how we behave and how we treat them something that will bring them in, and God commands it.
Yeah.
He wants us
Yeah.
to be that. Something that will bring them in and draw them. And that's in our genuineness. When if we're talking to people from other cultures or other beliefs here in America,
Yeah.
other attitudes, if they know that they are safe with us, that we're going to respect them, and that we care about them and we love them, they're going to feel a lot safer to have a conversation than they would otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, that's really important. The whole listen thing and don't talk too much. And yeah, you have to be a safe place.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be a safe place. I really like that. You also mentioned internal and externalizations to consider. So tell me about some of those things.
Okay. So internally, one of the things that I think all of us need to realize is we're not the ones that changes people's hearts.
Yeah.
We might expose them to information. We can provide prayer and encouragement, but God and the Holy Spirit are the ones that work on the heart.
Yeah.
And they have to be willing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to not think it's all up to us to do it, because we might be the best spreader of the news in the world, doing everything right, and the person might say no, or it could take a while. So we just have to realize it's not up to us, it's to God, up to God. Paul is my hero in the Bible. He's, awesome missionary.
Yeah.
He's like he's my hero for that.
He's a rock star.
And yet for Paul, he would stay in places often for years, going back to the temple, back to the marketplaces. When he was in house arrest in Rome, people coming to him.
Yeah.
And he would be sharing and trying to persuade, it says, and talk to them and engage them. And they kept coming back.
Yeah.
So there was something about him that was pleasing.
Right.
It wasn't offensive.
Right.
But it could take years to make impacts.
Yeah.
So we need to take that burden off us that we think one conversation and all of a sudden the whole world might change.
Right. And I think we talked a little bit about this, and I've mentioned this in some of my other videos, is that you might be one part of the story.
Right.
You might be the beginning, you might be the middle, you might be at the end.
Right.
You may never see them come to Christ, but you
Right.
play a part, and God's using you for whatever part that is.
Right. And I think, they say some plant and some water and some get the harvest, to be born. But we don't know what part we're going to play.
I think too, there's that fear of messing up. And as I think you said goofs.
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
Goofs. Everybody goofs.
Yeah.
I know Paul said, pray for me that I will speak the word courageously as I should,
Yes,
because at
yes,
times even he felt timid.
Yeah.
We all are going to make mistakes, and we just got to realize God can use it to good.
Yeah.
I know one of my friends, somebody who goes to church here, was in another country, Latin American country, trying to share the gospel, trying to share the 3 circles, and he thought he knew the word for sin. And the whole time he was saying pescado, which means fish. So we all have fish, and these fish separate us from God. But God sent Jesus to take away our fish. And yet,
That's wonderful, though.
once the translator got him to try to stop talking in Spanish, and he took over, it worked so much more. It's so much well. But they all got to laugh about it. And
Yeah.
the local people got to see he has a kind heart. He
Yeah.
sincerely meant what he said.
Yeah.
And people did respond to the gospel.
Yeah.
Even after that.
It was maybe a breaking of the ice.
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
You never know. You never
Things
know how
happen.
God can use these things.
And one other thing to say is when you are talking to someone, if you realize you've messed up, just be genuine and apologize.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us haven't, especially with family, haven't gone a little bit too far or come across a little bit too negative or something, and we have to draw back.
Yeah.
And we just say, hey, I screwed up. I messed up. I shouldn't have acted
Said
that
that,
way, or I was
yeah.
too strong and harsh. I didn't listen to you.
Yeah.
And those things are very, very impacting when you have the ability just to say, okay, in this case, I really did mess up.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
And that's definitely a heart and a spirit thing. I mean, if you really do have the heart of Christ and you know you've made a mistake, I think in any situation, not even when you're just, talking about God, but in
Right.
any situation, because you never know who you might be speaking to that they go, wow, that person apologized. Nobody apologizes anymore. I mean, and
Right.
that's
Right.
fairly true. We see that all over the place these days. Everybody
Right.
obfuscates and says, it wasn't my fault.
Right.
And so if you can apologize, I think that's good. Yeah.
Right. And I think your example, whether you're in the workplace or with your family, believers and non-believers, your example is a great testimony. And, in our world, a lot of things are considered okay that aren't really godly behaviors
Yeah.
and stuff. I remember when I was back in business and in sales, I went to this big conference, and the people at the end of this week gave me an award for never saying a cuss word the whole week. That was my award. And I was like, what? And I had no clue that
Yeah.
people had noticed that.
Mm.
And it's not like I'm the greatest person in the world, but I somehow had impacted them through that. And
Yeah.
that was something that just was like, oh my gosh, this made me stand out. And then, to those who I could tell them why I'm not, cussing and talking like that,
Yeah.
But that really did impact me. I've told that to my girls and everything. We have an opportunity by our behavior, if we're positive people, if we show care when care is needed for
Yes,
people in
yes.
situations,
Yeah.
if we're willing to say, hey, I made a mistake,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
These things are so impacting. And then we can say why
Yeah.
we are like this. It's
Yeah.
like God has changed me. God has helped me. God has equipped me. And
Yeah.
without him, there's no telling where I'd be.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that means a lot to a lot of people to
Mhm.
know that you don't have to be a proselytizer. You can
Mhm.
just be you.
Mhm.
And if people start asking you, why are you this way? You can
Right.
be like,
Hey.
yeah, hey,
There's a
is why I
reason.
am. Exactly.
Right.
Share your experiences. They'll know we're Christians by our love.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's turn this around a little bit. The big question, and I know a lot of people out there are asking this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's all well and fine, Allison, but I can't talk to my own family about
Right.
this. So it can be really awkward. It can be combative. How do I do that? What would you say to them?
Okay. Pray, number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because God is the one that changes hearts
Right.
and also can give us words that we might not think of to help us speak
Mhm,
and gives us what we need. It is hard. I mean, I have family members who are not walking with the Lord either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's that fine line of being a living witness
Yeah.
of how God's working in your life, not being afraid to say that,
Yeah.
not being afraid to share nuggets, of why you think what you think, why you believe it, why it's
Right.
true. If they have science concerns, golly, Google it. Try to find some
Yeah.
resources. There's a lot of resources we can talk about before we're done.
Right.
If they have, like, I've been hurt by the church, so I'm going to not have anything to do with it. We listen to them, and
Yeah.
then we can talk about those things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but
again,
don't be
it's listening.
dismissive
Yes.
of somebody's thoughts
Yes.
and, accept that because
Yep.
that's their experience. May not be yours, but that's their experience.
Yeah. And in building that relationship, because if and letting them know they're not just an object that you're trying to save, they are someone you care about.
Yes. Yes.
You're not they're not your project.
right.
They're someone you deeply care about, and be
Yeah.
there, but give them space to breathe, space to doubt. Show them when it's appropriate what you know, what you've learned, what the Bible says, and things like that. But have grace.
Yeah. Allow them to ask questions.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to not know all the answers.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
I have that's my bad tendency, especially as a mom. And I have great kids, and they're all Bible believers, but they'll still stump me sometimes, and
Oh,
they'll be
yeah.
like, "Okay, mom," and I'm like, "All right," but and I have to be careful about not trying to and I'm like, "All right, let me do some research and
Right.
send you some more
Right.
information on
Right.
that."
Right.
Yeah.
So, for the past several years, there's been different. Can I go into the resources?
Yeah,
or do
for
you
sure, absolutely.
Okay, different resources out there. Greg Kokel has numerous books, Street Smarts and Tactics. I've got them in hard copy. My life right now is so busy, although I love books, I love the feel, I don't have time to sit. So while I'm getting ready in the mornings, I turn on the audiobooks and I'm listening and I'm learning. And sometimes I have to listen to them over and over.
Yeah.
Because I'm visual, not audio.
Yeah, I could be that way.
Most people are that way. But I'm learning so much. And the first time I listened to some of these, I would be confused. The second time I started getting it, The third time, it was getting a good foundation in my brain.
Yeah.
And so now when people are bringing up things, family members or not, I can remember and be able to answer some of those questions and talk and engage with them. And it's so powerful. There are others. James Warner Wallace.
Yeah, he's really fantastic.
So many. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got so many. Person of Interest, Cold Case Christianity. These books can answer a lot of the questions that people have out there, these books.
And
they're
he's
good
a
resources.
detective, isn't that correct?
He's the one who was a former detective.
Yep.
So he applies the forensic skills he was knowing about and investigative skills and all that to the Gospels and to the historical accounts. And he answers a lot of questions. Out on the internet, there's a lot of false material. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. So he will really address some of the big questions that have been put out there and say, hey, let's step back and look at the primary sources in what we know from history.
Right.
Or here, let's go to science and what do some of these leading Nobel Peace Prize winning scientists say about creation?
Right.
You know, or say about intelligent design and things. So you can listen to those things to equip you in those special circumstances.
Yeah, and even if you don't 100% believe in all of that stuff yet, it broadens your horizons.
Right.
I do think these days we're very like, well, we stay in our lane, and if somebody kind of comes into our lane, we want to kind of bat them away, and that's for everybody, no matter what your thought process is. And I think if you open the doors to understanding more,
it really helps.
Yeah.
And in the Bible is the foundation. So I'm quoting or suggesting different sources outside of the Bible, but the Bible's the key to it.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to answer questions about the Bible's legitimacy, again, James Warner Wallace can help answer a lot of that for people who doubt scriptures.
Yeah.
To help you know why it's trustworthy and why you can believe it.
Yeah, Case for Christ, C.S. Lewis is really good.
Right.
J.I. Packer, if you haven't heard of him, he's really good. He has a book called Knowing God. He has quite a few. He's a contemporary of C.S. Lewis. And there are some really great books that you can read to give you a more in-depth look into scriptures.
Right.
Yeah.
And it helps. And baby steps. When you first start reading and learning, it might be a little overwhelming, but just turn it on when you're getting ready in the mornings or something, and just see what it can do through you over time to help equip you and build your knowledge base.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, whenever we get nervous about things that we're learning, like, I don't know the Bible that well. Well, here's the thing. I've read through the Bible, I don't know how many times, but I know different stories, but I couldn't quote you scripture verse for all of them.
Yes. Oh, no.
And generally, when you're in a situation where you're talking to people, I've found it very useful to just say, well, here's a scripture. And they're like, where is that? And I'm like, Google it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. It is in here. And so we have so many great resources, today to help back us up on things. We're like, why don't you just Google that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot.
Thank you so much.
You're
you
welcome.
have a wealth of knowledge. She's so good at this. And
I use my iPad well to listen and learn, but I also practice. If you get a chance to go on mission trips with First Colony, or when we do the 3 Circles training, that's one way to share. There's so many ways to share.
Yeah.
Your faith. That's more with strangers on the mission field, but you can also do it with other people. We can equip you. So if you need help, reach out.
And she's talking about things at First Colony. If you're not in a Bible study, get in one. If you're not in a connection group that does these sorts of things, get in them. And then, because it's really good to have conversations with other people to work out some of these things that you may have some questions about, and maybe you haven't been able to find the information.
Right.
And it's always better when you can talk through things with really good Bible believing people, and that will help you too. Particularly if you have somebody that you're like, I'm struggling with this person. Here's another thing. They can pray for you.
Yep. Yes. Very much so.
And prayer is so important when you're having a struggle with somebody who's asking you really good questions, and you're like, I just want them to know how good God is. And that's you've given us some really good information about how to make God and the Bible desirable. Because I think people are looking for it. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for being with us today. If you like this, so subscribe, and share it with somebody. Remember, as we said, you don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
You do not have to have all the answers.
Thank goodness.
ask a lot of questions, be a good listener, as she said, and know that God is in control.
Right.
And it's not up to you, it's up to him. And you just be his mouthpiece, his example to others around you. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time.